Welcome into week 11, everybody. I can't honestly believe how fast the season is going. I guess the pace of the season might be going a bit different depending on how you're doing in fantasy football. If you're losing, I'm assuming it's going slower. If you're doing great, it's going really, really fast. Yeah, we're here in week 11. As usual, this episode is brought to you by the amazing Fast Draft app. It's your go-to for the quickest and easiest DFS out there. Head over to Fast Draft app today and start drafting faster. Honestly, be sure to use our promo code 32BW to get a deposit match on your first deposit. I like to talk about my entry into the Super Slam contest this week. It's a $10 entry, and I think you get 10 entries max for the Super Slam. And the whole objective with the Fast Draft app, if you're not familiar with this kind of format, it's slightly different than your other daily fantasy or DFS contests out there. With this, what you're doing is you're starting receivers, tight ends, and running backs only. And the scoring format is basically the same as others. Point per reception, pretty straightforward. But what you're doing is you're trying to match or insert receivers into this correct bonus spots, right? So I have Ja'Marr Chase at the highest bonus spot, which is, I believe, a 2.0, if I'm reading that correctly. And then I got McBride at 1.7. And then I have JSN, Collins, Warren, and Marks. And the scoring format, it starts to lessen and descend the further down the line you go, right? So Chase would be the highest score, right? He's playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has gone crazy against the Pittsburgh Steelers this year already with Joe Flacco. And I think the hesitancy with Ja'Marr Chase is that, okay, look, he smoked him once again. He smoked him once already, and they got destroyed. Are they going to let that happen again? Well, they shouldn't, but I've seen the Steelers be stubborn in their coverage habits. I remember 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Keenan Allen was playing against them on like a Sunday night football game. Sorry, I had hair in my mouth. I just trimmed my mustache. Sorry about that. I got to look good. I got to try and look good for you guys. Keenan Allen was playing well against them, and they refused to put a nickel cornerback on him, and he just roasted them all game. They just wanted to put a linebacker on him. That's all they did. So we've seen the Steelers not adapt correctly. And then I got Trey McBride as the second highest bonus scorer of the week because I think he's going to be the sole beneficiary of all of Jacoby Brissett's targets. Marvin Harrison had a procedure done this week, and he's already ruled out. McBride should be a huge volume eater, probably going to finish, if he was a wide receiver, as a top 5 wide receiver this week. JSN, stud, lock him in. He's getting a 40 to 50% target share. He's an amazing route runner this year. Nico Collins against the Titans. I think per Jacob Gibbs on Twitter, I just saw something today where he anticipates the Titans to be one of the higher scoring or higher than projected scoring teams of this week's slate. Jaylen Warren gets the Bengals, layup. And then Woody Marks, I think he finished as the RB4. He gets the Titans this week in Tennessee, but he finished as the RB4 last time he played against them. He's coming off, I believe, an 80% snap share. Finished as middling RB2 last week versus the Jags. But, I mean, look, D'Amico Ryans just put out a quote this week, or just today, actually. Let's see what it says. Where is it? Of course, it's gone. Here we go. Head coach D'Amico Ryans on the Texans rookies. No more rookies, right? He's saying no more rookies. Woody, let's go. Woody has done a great job. We got to continue to feed him more. Higgins, the guy's catch radius is insane. You need a big play on 4th down. Who shows up? It's Jaylen Noel. So we're seeing the Texans kind of shift to the rookies more. And, we've kind of gotten impatient with D'Amico because we feel like they should have been starting before. And Christian Kirk in the way of Jaylen Noel doesn't really make sense because Jaylen Noel's come up clutch. He is a deeper A-dot slot receiver than most would think he is. He's not your typical 5-yard, 10-yard, or 5-7-yard slot wide receiver. The guy goes downfield. He makes clutch catches. He's awesome. Great, has great hands. So we love that, and that is the fast draft lineup this week. Thank you for listening, and I really encourage you guys all to go and try it. It's a really interesting new format. It really makes you think. It's not about starting just studs. It's about putting the studs in the correct scoring positions, in the bonus positions. On to this week's starts and sits. At start this week, we have Jacoby Brissett versus the Arizona Cardinals, right? So ECR right now, he's QB 19. I don't understand why. In the 4 games Brissett has started for the Cardinals this season, he's finished as the QB 7, 12, 10, and 10. He faces the San Francisco 49ers this week, whose pass defense is ranked as the 27th worst in EPA per pass, and they have surrendered the 10th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. San Francisco also ranks dead last in pressure and sack rate among all NFL defenses. Dead last. So Arizona is projected to score a healthy 22.75 points in Week 11. And I think it's probably safe to assume that most of those points will come via the pass, Jacoby Brissett. Since Brissett took over, Arizona has scored 11 touchdowns. Brissett has accounted for 8 of those touchdowns, or 70% of those touchdowns. In fact, Arizona has ranked first in pass rate when leading by at least 8 points. So all that to say that the running game really isn't something you can depend on. I think when you look at what Brissett is, he's pretty much like a Joe Flacco in that they're just relying on Brissett's arm, because it's Emari Demercado and Bam Knight and Michael Carter. There really isn't a semblance of a real run game over there. The coaches are trying to figure it out each and every single week. So I think we can count on Brissett again for another top 10 finish. He has finished as a QB1 despite the degree of difficulty during his matchups. San Francisco presents as a plush opponent and fertile grounds for another solid outing for anybody looking to stream a quarterback. Like me, I lost Jackson Dart, so I'm forced to start Brissett this week. At sit, I got Bo Nix versus the Kansas City Chiefs. He's really been a struggle bus QB1 in fantasy over the past 2 weeks, finishing as the QB 14 and 25. He's been especially bad when throwing against pressure. On the year, Nix ranks 23rd in EPA per dropback when throwing against pressure. His company includes the likes of Bryce Young, Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, and Trevor Lawrence. Nix gets a well-rested Kansas City defense this week, which ranks as the 8th best pass rush in the league. It's going to be another bad fantasy outing for, I think, Bo Nix this week. I'd avoid him. I believe he is actually ranked 1 spot as the QB 20 behind Jacoby Brissett this week. At running back to start, we got Woody Marks. He's the ECR RB 23 this week, and I think he deserves to be higher this week. Marks makes his 3rd appearance on the start list this season, but under different circumstances than before. If you haven't been keeping up, Marks finished week 10 with an impressive 80% snap share, out-touching Nick Chubb 16-6. We've seen the story unfold with Marks previously. In week 4 against the Titans, he finished as the RB4, and many considered him as the Texas RB1 going forward until he was outperformed by Nick Chubb the following week against the Ravens. The concern heading into week 11 is that the game script may have influenced Marks' week 10 snap share. Houston fell behind early against Jacksonville last week and remained in catch-up mode for the entirety of the game, making Marks the preferred option in those circumstances. However, there is evidence that Houston made a switch before week 10 and the game script that unfolded. According to Josh Norris of Underdog Fantasy, Marks started in week 10 and continued to start the next 7 opening drives. In fact, I discovered that Chubb did not receive his first touch until 6 minutes and 59 seconds into the game, into the first quarter, when the Texans were down by 10 points. Now Marks faces this very same Titans defense again this week, the same team against which he excelled as an RB4 earlier in the season. Houston tends to prioritize the running backs based on matchups, and it looks like Marks is set for another top 12 performance against a team he previously broke out against. My sit this week is Tyrone Tracy versus the Green Bay Packers. I think managers may feel more comfortable starting Tracy in week 11 as a low-end RB2, or flex option. I think in week 10, he finished with a 67% snap share and decent production on the ground on those snaps. His matchup versus the Green Bay Packers this week couldn't be worse, though. On first and second downs, Green Bay has allowed the fewest yards per receptions, 4.09 to be exact, to opposing running backs. Tracy ran 16 routes last week. 14 of his routes run were on first and second down. Green Bay has also surrendered the sixth fewest yards per attempt, 4.19 outside of the red zone to opposing running backs. If we're talking probabilities, then I think it's a good bet that he'll finish with that Tracy will finish with a low floor and a slight chance of having a spike week outside of busted coverage on a reception. Now, after I wrote this, Jameis Winston was named as a starter, and Jameis Winston games can become crazy shootouts. But I think as a rusher, Tyrone Tracy is not set up for a good matchup. Rico Dowdle did have a good game against the Green Bay Packers, but the Carolina offensive run blocking has been far, far better than what the New York Giants have been. We just saw Saquon Barkley last week actually just get bottled up for 2.7 yards a pop. So I think, they are actually a really, really good run defense, and the New York Giants are not a good enough passing. They're not as good of a pass blocking unit as the Carolina Panthers. We're going to take a quick break and hear from our really good friend, Matthew Kelly, and we'll be back with the rest of the show.
It is 32 Beat Writers season, August, when they can make you a lot of money, especially on a platform like Fast Draft. Doesn't have hundreds of best ball bro killers. So when there's an injury and you hear about it through 32 Beat Writers, you can run to the Fast Draft app and jump into a Flex 4 game. Just draft any 6 Flex players. Top 4 enter your lineup every week. Or the Rabbit, 15-round best ball. Get your quarterback wide receiver stacks, get your running back sleepers. And if you follow 32 Beat Writers, you can jump into these draft rooms and be like, oh my God, I'm avoiding this guy at all costs, and I'm gobbling up all of this other running back before the larger public is fully aware, has fully digested the ramifications of the information that 32 Beat Writers is sharing. So go get Fast Draft, type in that code 32BW. 32BW is the code. Get you a $50 deposit match on Fast Draft. Now let's go start drafting faster.
Let's get back to our start sit show with our wide receiver starts this week. I got Trey Tucker as a start versus the Dallas Cowboys. Tucker has been the primary deep threat for the Las Vegas Raiders this year, and he has had moderate production out of that role so far. However, this week, he's fortunate enough to have the most desirable matchup that immensely favors his specific skill set. Dallas's defense has been one of the three defenses in the league that have allowed over 1,000 receiving yards on receptions of 20 yards or more. They also rank second in receptions allowed that have traveled 20 air yards or more, and second in touchdowns on said deep passes. So they suck against the deep pass. Tucker is a fantastic candidate to have a spike week. He makes for one of this week's best dart throws and flex options, and I'd be really inclined to start him if you're in a pinch at flex, or even as a second flex. I mean, I think he's going to have a fantastic game. Texans have shown little to no resistance when they're playing against wide receivers. They've shown zero wide receivers, zero resistance, actually, for that matter. Wide receivers sit this week. It's kind of sad. Cortland Sutton versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I think we've already discussed Bo Nix's issues heading into this matchup, but still Sutton has to deal with a secondary that's been the best at surrendering the fewest yards per reception to opposing wide receivers. This severely limits the likelihood that Sutton will have a big-time play this week, especially when considering that he's been working on limited volume. Troy Franklin has already stolen a significant number of targets from Sutton over the past few weeks. Add in Nix, who struggles when throwing his pressure, and Sutton is an easy sit this week. Honestly, I'd rather start Trey Tucker over him. Christian Watson, Tez Johnson are also better options this week. For our tight ends to sit and start this week, I got Kyle Pitts as a start versus the Carolina Panthers. He's been brutal for fantasy managers. I think he finished as a tight end 25 and 24 in over the past 2 weeks. The frustration managers may be feeling an inclination to bench him this week is understandable. However, I implore you guys to keep him in their lineups, in your lineups for at least a week more. Carolina has been the premier matchup for tight ends this year. They have allowed a league high 9.78 yards per target and a 0.761 EPA per target to opposing tight ends. That is huge. That's really, really high. 0.761 is, I think, top 2 in the, or, the second worst in the league this year. This is the kind of matchup any non-top 3 tight end needs. Pitts' fantasy value should experience a healthy pulse in week 11. Tight end to sit this week, Mark Andrews versus the Cleveland Browns. Andrews has been incredibly efficient with his limited opportunities lately, but this week's matchup against Cleveland should prove an especially challenging task for Andrews. The Browns have a top 10 defense when defending opposing tight ends. They rank 10th best in yards per target and 8th in EPA per target allowed to tight ends. If you're starting Andrews this week, it should be in the hopes that he grabs another touchdown. He scored 8 touchdowns on his 8 receptions over the past 2 weeks. That is highly unsustainable, and such trends usually cease to exist when faced with formidable defenses. That's going to do it for our show this week, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate anybody who watches the show. We just started this fantasy project, considerable, consistent fantasy project here at 32 Beat Writers, and we hope to grow a large following. If you guys have any feedback on what you'd like to see from us here at 32 Beat Writers, please feel free to message me, contact 32 Beat Writers on what we need to do to improve. If we're doing good, I appreciate that as well. I appreciate any feedback on that as well. We are quickly also heading into the off season, and it's really it's really starting to become that time to start honing in on this 2026 rookie draft class. TJ Wangert has, I say it at the end of every show, I implore you guys to go watch TJ's videos on our YouTube channel and Spotify, listen to the podcast. He is one of the most underrated listens to on this platform, on all of Dynasty analysts or college rookie analysts. He's so tuned in. So we're going to get that going. Again, we're going to be going to the Shrine Bowl. I'm going to be creating rookie profiles for all of these guys. A lot of advanced metrics I'll be sharing. A lot of good write-ups I'll be sharing. So it's almost that time of season. If you're into Dynasty, this is where we thrive. This is, we're going to be doing a lot of reporting on this kind of stuff coming out in the offseason. So stick with us. Again, I love all of you guys. I think we're a really great community. We have a really passionate crowd. We have everybody in our Discord, our Discord guys, beginners, advanced guys, and everybody's feeding off each other. It's not just me and they're giving advice. It's a lot of the advice. The community is all helping each other, and it's really cool to see. And I think it's really cool to see that as the year goes on a whole, from the fantasy community. So with that said, take care of each other. Be well. We're almost at the end of the season. Thanksgiving is coming up. Don't forget to spend time with your families, because it's a busy time of the year with work and everything else. And I think that time goes really, really fast. So get in those pockets of time with your family and your loved ones when you can. Time goes fast, and let's have fun. All right, guys, take care and be well.